Actually, 3 minutes early. Look at us, Peter. We are responsible adults. We are actually 3 minutes early to the podcast that we said would start at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Isn't that crazy?
That is impressive.
I know, we're slowly growing up, guys, slowly. But thank you, everyone who has listened and who has shared. And we're getting a nice, steady audience, which is cool. And hopefully it keeps growing and you share. And maybe you can't follow all the podcasts. Obviously, it's going to be a lot of podcasts. But if you happen to see in the description of the video your favorite episode and you want to chat about it for about 10 minutes, well, this is the podcast for you. So, Pete, how has your X Files binging been? Where are you at now?
I actually today I was on season 2, episode 12, Aubrey.
Oh, you're right caught up with me because that's exactly where I stopped. And the next episode, I believe, is the freaky one with the high school teachers and principals who have like some secret witch satanic ritual cabal.
I
Uh,
love that one.
me too. Yes, but I had to stop just to be able to survive the week of training and traveling to Campinas and everything that I've been doing in the last week or so. But I'll be right back on it because
Yeah.
there is. Now, let me ask you. Even though we're jumping ahead slightly, but have you noticed, like, because I did automatically, like a real jump in quality from season two to one, even just with camera work, lighting, everything. I don't know.
Yeah.
It was like it's tighter.
Yeah, the last few episodes have been hard for me because, like I said, I've been exhausted at the end of the day most of this week. So I haven't been paying probably as close attention as I normally would.
Oh, I get you. Yeah, no, for me it was just like as much as season one is great, and there are some classic episodes, and we'll be talking about some of those classic episodes tonight. It's not consistent. There are episodes in season one that definitely feel dated, just in the sense of how it's filmed, the camera work, the direction, and things like that. Whereas season two, I think, is when they were like, all right, we got it. We got this show going. Let's just throw everything in the kitchen sink at these folks and have fun with it. So it's for me, I noticed that when I got to season two, but we'll talk about that when we get there to season two, which we will get there soon. Amazing how quickly these go
Yeah,
by.
yeah.
Yeah.
One more episode of season one, and we're done.
Yeah, we'll probably do like a season one recap episode of the
Okay.
podcast and give our top five or whatever, top 10. And then move on to season two. Oh, and I don't know if I said like and subscribe if you can. And I don't know what happened to my like and subscribe button. It's not there. It should be there. But if you can, please do so. Like and subscribe. So we're going to get to it in just a second. I just want to do something here, which is show our beautiful faces. And for those of you who are fans of movies and um, yeah, in general, okay, we have a podcast every Monday night
Mm-hmm.
at about the same time. Okay, we try to start at 10, but most of the time we start at 11 because it's just we get busy, y'all. We just get busy. So if you get a chance, please watch that. Out of this string of episodes, what any general thoughts?
Yeah, I thought this string of episodes is actually weaker than the last two we looked at, but it contains the very best of the whole season, as far as I'm concerned. So it's kind of a string of mediocrity with a real gem in there.
I agree. I agree. And I felt about that just in this whole middle section of the X Files season one is that it's a hard one to get through. I think of all the seasons just from memory. I think that season one is the one that I was like, oh goodness, can we get to the classic stuff? I mean, because it'll go like wow to yeah, not terrible, but you're kind of twiddling your thumbs a little bit, like let's get to the end of it. Whereas later on, later seasons, there's less of that. I mean, you're not going to get a classic episode every week, but at least you're going to get something that will make you go, "Oh, that was cool." I didn't waste 40 minutes of my life. Um, so yeah, I'm kind of the same feeling. By the way, I was covering a little bit so that we can have that. There you go. Like and subscribe button at the bottom. Before we get to it, I want to give a shout out to just a few folks. First is, and I had set him up. Oh, Joe. Oh my God, how do I pronounce his name? Chorozewski. Okay, it's Chorozewsky. Chorozewski. Anyway, he said in the X Files group, and thank you everybody in the X Files groups that have been interacting when I post the podcast in there. He said, as my wife and I are meticulously rewatching the whole series, I'm noticing one strange trend. Why do they always stay in dumpy single-story motels with doors to the outside, even in supposed major cities? Wouldn't the available budget afford them lodging at a name hotel chain, and especially locations with better security? Seems so odd. What do you think about that, Pete? You think they're
I,
shafting our boys?
no, I think this has to do with the location where it was filmed. It's listed as being filmed in Vancouver, but really it's mostly filmed in like the surrounding areas of Burnaby, Richmond, and the Fraser Valley, and that's what they had to work with, man.
Yeah, sometimes we need to step um, out of the fiction of the show and go into the reality of is that sometimes it's just limitations due to budgets. We'll have the characters not do the cool stuff that we think they should do. Although someone in the comments said something interesting, and one is that a lot of ratty little hotels, but two, they're not really spending that much money on Mulder and Scully to begin with. I mean, they got him in the
Right.
basement. So.
Yeah.
Although I'm always surprised how many cars they can get. They can get a car a minute, man.
That's true, yeah.
Yes, but I don't think they're allocating that much money from the FBI to make sure Mulder and Scully catch Bigfoot. So that might be a reason for that too. But
Yeah.
other times it's just plain old. We don't have the budget for it. Some folks make this comment about Star Trek. Why do they only play classical music? Well, man, try to get the music rights. It's very difficult. It's not that we stopped digging Queen in 200 years. I'm sure there's still Queen fans and James Brown fans and et cetera, et cetera. It's just you can't play that on the show because it's expensive. Although that's what I thought was so cool with Star Trek Discovery, season 2, where Tilly started singing Space Odyssey.
Yeah.
And it's like, cool, they think David Bowie made it to the Star Trek century, whatever it is, the 23rd century or whatever. So that was cool that they were able to do that now, but at the time it was kind of difficult to get the rights to everything. And one more thing I want to talk about real quick before we get to it, and it was somebody else in the Brian Lomax posted this in one of the X-Files groups. I can't see which one right now, but it's the X-Files Cold Cases, which was really cool. I started listening to it. He posted this in the X-Files group on Facebook. Came out in 2017, and the basic story is that the FBI headquarters, there's a data breach at FBI headquarters, and it gives a mysterious group access to Mulder and Scully's old files. And the resulting investigation brings them into contact with a number of old friends, okay, including original cast member Mitch Pileggi as Skinner, William B. Davis as the cigarette smoking man, and Tom Braidwood, Dean Haglund, and Bruce Harwood of the Lone Gunmen. They all return for this audio drama, including David Duchovny and Gillian Anderson. So I started listening to it. It's been really cool so far. So for those that are looking for more X-Files post TV show, this is one I recommend. It's on Audible, and you can, I think you can get a month free on Audible to listen, but it's elsewhere. I'll just put it that way. And elsewhere is where I have been listening to it. So definitely dig that. And it's very well done. They took a lot of care to do this with the sound effects and this, that, and the third to make it really sound like you're in the X-Files. And it takes place post I Want to Believe. It's
Okay.
right after that second movie.
Yeah.
Actually, there's a nice I'll read a little blurb here from Goodreads. This was written by Joe Harris, the audio. Okay. Joe Harris, Chris Carter was in there. Chris Maggs was the adapter. And this guy wrote a kind of a cool write-up here. The series that has a generation looking to the sky gets a breathtaking audio reprise in an original full-cast dramatization featuring actors David Duchovny and Gillian Anderson returning to voice FBI agents Fox Mulder and Dana Scully. Based upon the graphic novels by Joe Harris, with creative direction from series creator Chris Carter, and adapted, blah, blah, blah. And Cold Cases marks yet another thrilling addition to the pantheon of X-Files stories, featuring mind-blowing otherworldly soundscapes of liquefying aliens, hissing creatures, and humming spacecraft. Listeners get to experience the duo's investigations like never before. It's set after the events of the X-Files, I Want to Believe, and provides additional backstory to the incidents that pulled Mulder and Scully out of reclusion prior to the 2016's miniseries revival. And then it goes into the database breach at FBI headquarters that brings them all together. Here, fans are treated once again to Mulder and Scully's irreplicable chemistry, as only the series leads could deliver. Duchovny's deadpan and cynical aloofness finding its natural counterpoint in Anderson's unwavering intelligence and rigidity. So we got really nice review here from this. So check that out. And later on, when we get closer to the end of all these podcasts, I'll bring up a little bit of these X-Files comic books, which I was reading, and they're really cool. It was season 10, they would call it. And it was actually better than the actual season 10. Pete, go ahead, sir. I'll let you go. I've talked enough to begin. Beyond the Episode 13. But wait. Just before you do go, let's do the usual here, which is this is episode 13, released January 7th. So we started the year with this episode, first episode of the year, 1994. And got itself some 10 million viewers, written by Glenn Morgan and James Wong, and directed by David Nutter. So we got the powerhouse team there. And it deals with, after Scully's father dies, suddenly her skepticism is put to test by a prisoner on death row who claims that by using recently gained psychic powers, he can help her catch a kidnapper. But go ahead, sir.
Yeah. This is far and away my favorite episode of the season, and we've compared this, and well, everyone's compared this a bit to Silence of the Lambs, and this is definitely the most Silence of the Lammy episode. It's the FBI turning to an imprisoned serial killer for help in solving an active case, with particularly the female agent in this case kind of developing a connection to the killer, although for much different reasons than Silence of the Lambs. And it has to do with the fact that initially, there's a big backstory to this, actually, that Mulder actually helped catch this guy back when he was a criminal profiler. And he is on death row now, but he claims to have information about this couple who've recently been kidnapped through his recently developed psychic powers. And this is the first time we get that role reversal of Mulder and Scully being the skeptic and the believer, because in addition, his psychic powers appear to be channeling Scully's recently deceased father. And as the catchphrase goes, she wants to believe. And she does, of course, have this spiritual side, this Catholic background that to her makes it seem like this is within the realm of possibility. Whereas Mulder thinks he actually orchestrated the whole thing from prison and is just using this as a big scam to get out of being executed. So yes, it's definitely got the Silence of the Lambs vibe, but it's also got the role reversal vibe. And it's got our man here, Brad Dourif, whom this part was basically written for. And there's kind of a cool backstory to this that I saw in the extras. And that is that Chris Carter wanted Brad Dourif for this so much. And he just wanted more money than the network was willing to pay. So he called up one of the Fox execs on Thanksgiving dinner and just begged him for more money to get Brad Dourif. And the guy said, fine, I'll do it if you'll just let me get back to Thanksgiving dinner. And that was written into the story. The reason why he's on death row is because he killed his whole family over Thanksgiving dinner. So that's kind of a nice little bit of trivia to this.
I didn't know that. Where would people know him from?
Well, most people probably know him as Chucky from the Child's Play movies.
Yeah. Does he do the voice?
He does the voice, and he played the live action character in the first one as well. And he also won an Academy, not won, he was nominated for an Academy Award for his portrayal of Billy in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Cool. I'm looking.
Also in Deadwood, he was Doc Cochran in Deadwood.
Yes, he was in Deadwood. He was definitely in Deadwood, and he was in a bunch of shows throughout the 80s. Miami Vice. He was in Moonlighting. He was, The Equalizer. So he's been in a bunch of shows. Tales of the Unexpected, The Hitchhiker, which was a show I really liked.
Yeah.
You ever watched The Hitchhiker?
Of course, yeah. I think I've probably seen them all, actually.
Yeah, cool show. Oh, he was on Star Trek Voyager. Crewman Lon Sutter. Interesting. His face looked familiar from Star Trek. So everybody's been in Star Trek. And speaking of people that have been in other shows, Scully's dad, who's played by Don Davis, rest in peace. He that's another Twin Peaks connection, because he was also in Twin Peaks as General Briggs, if I am not mistaken. And it's kind of cool that he plays a military guy in this show, but let me just double check. Major Garland Briggs in Twin Peaks, and then he just jumped over to the X-Files to play Scully's dad. He shows up in another episode in a flashback in season 2, but he's there very quickly because he dies suddenly. And what Pete said is what I think is very interesting about this episode is that it pulls out a few cards that we get to see later on play out a little bit more. One is that we find out that Scully definitely has a strong spiritual side to her. So that's the one kind of area where she's very open to accepting things that are not easily explained. There's a really great episode in season 6 or 7, I think, I forget, where that's like the whole episode is just this, and it's this argument between Mulder and Scully about spirituality. We get a sense that Mulder is definitely not into it, and maybe even atheist or agnostic, whereas Scully is definitely not. And it was the first role reversal, the hardcore role reversal, where Mulder is playing the part of the skeptic and it's rare, but I do like those episodes where Scully is the one at the forefront saying, no, there's a possibility, and Mulder's the one that's giving her all her logic. So that's very nice. Um, Little nod to Mulder being really addicted to porn at the beginning of the episode, because when she goes down to the basement to the office to talk to him, she sees him really engrossed in something, and she says, last time I saw you this engrossed, you were reading the adult video news. But
Yeah, yeah.
so we get that in there, because we do know Mulder does like his videos. There's more jokes like that throughout the series.
Oh yeah.
And uh, and I, in my notes, I also put Silence of the Lambs pumped to 100,000%. Because it's almost what they did with the elements of The Thing in the episode Ice, where you had the basic atmosphere, the basic idea of just these folks out in this Arctic outpost, and then what can happen when you have this mysterious bio. Uh, what would you call it, like parasite, whatever,
Yeah,
and
Parasite.
they just pumped it up. And they did the same thing here, where they got the basic concept of Silence of the Lambs, where they need this serial killer's help to find another serial killer, and they just pumped it up to the max, adding the X Files flair. And I gave it 5 stars too. I think it's a classic episode. For whatever reason, I don't remember it from first run. I remember watching it from the first time when I was doing the rewatch a few years back, and I was just shocked by how good it was and how dark it was. Extremely
Yeah.
dark. And I actually sent it to a friend who had never, or a couple actually, who had never seen the X Files, because I thought it was so good. And I was like, girls, you should watch this episode. And needless to say, I don't think they watched any more X Files. I think I started on the wrong episode, because it is strong, guys. If you, this is one, I don't know if you kind of have to ease into the X Files, because it does go dark, but it doesn't go dark all the time. And this one is just like, yeah, we're just gonna fuck with your brain and your uh, just scare the shit out of you, like with no remorse for 40 minutes. And they succeed. They succeed. It's an absolute classic episode. And the soul of Luther Boggs drowns in hell's sea of fire.
Yeah,
It's a
nice use of that song too. It's like almost like the use of the song "Blue Velvet," which Brad Dourif was also in, by the way. But yeah, it's like almost like the use of the song "Blue Velvet" in the movie of the same name. It's just such a contrast to the dark tone of the show that it actually makes it even darker.
And what I do like about it, because I had forgotten, is that he really does have these powers, which I think is really cool too. Uh, and it's something that I don't know, for whatever reason, I had just kind of, and I think we talked about this in a previous podcast, where I couldn't remember in the early episodes if like ghosts really existed, like if it was just the alien stuff and the kind of weird genetic stuff. But if it went, when they had paranormal episodes that dealt with spirits and ghosts, if they kind of just left it hanging as could have been, could have not been. And no, I mean, it goes full board. And he actually does have these psychic powers. And the last scene where he's going to the death chamber and he sees the spirits of all these folks just waiting for him. It's horrifying. It's like the movie Ghost. Remember Ghost with Patrick Swayze and
No, I've
Demi
never
Moore?
seen it.
You've never seen Ghost? Oh
No.
man, good fucking movie. But and Whoopi Goldberg, who steals the show, won an Academy Award for that one, but she deserved it. But one of the freakiest scenes in that movie, one of the darker scenes, because I'm not really into romantic type movies, but this movie's got a lot of other elements going for it. including a dark element, which is these black spirits, like these shadow figures that will take somebody's body when they die. And I remember when I was a little kid watching Ghosts, and I'd be scared shitless of that, because they would just come out of the walls and these shadow figures, and the person's like screaming, like, no, no. And then they get taken to what would appear to be a really bad place. So the end of this scene reminded me of that desperation I felt in those scenes, where after you die, and imagine just seeing all these kind of dark figures around you and all the people you fucked over if you weren't a good little soul, just waiting for you. And see, that would have made Disney's Soul a little bit better if they would have gone dark. Joe, one of Joe's friends dies, and then he's like, "You were a drug dealer. You were selling drugs to young kids," and he gets punished for it in like hell. So yeah, definitely a great show. So let us know there in the comments if you dig this episode, or if you've never seen it. You really should. But now let's get to a very bizarre episode.
Yeah, slightly.
Which is Genderbender. Okay, and Genderbender here is episode that came out in. Give me a second here, guys. By the way, I'm using the X-Files fandom site, which is fucking awesome. It's got everything you want, including breakdown of which episodes are mythology episodes, which are Monster of the Week episodes. So you can follow along. This came out the following week, January 21st, and they even have like little posters of original promos. It says its weapon is sex, its desire is deadly. Tonight, the ultimate sex killer stalks an FBI agent. That was the promo for this. That's crazy. They didn't have this on here last week. That's crazy. Look at this, Pete. I'll share the screen real quick, because when I was doing this shit last week, I didn't see these, but that's pretty fucking funny. Wait, let me share the screen with you and the audience. But check out this little promo poster there. That's kind of cool.
Oh, wow.
But yes, this episode here is a doozy, and it's got 11 million viewers. So it was written by Larry Barber and Paul Barber, and directed by Rob Bowman. 14th episode here, and Mulder and Scully investigate a closed community called the Kindred, who appear to have the ability to switch genders. So what are your general feelings here about Genderbender?
It gets points for weirdness. That's about all I can really say in an overwhelmingly positive way. It's kind of strange. It's not terrible. It's definitely original. But yeah, the reason why the X-Files team is called in on this is because they're investigating a murder where the security camera shows that the apparent killer went into the hotel room as a woman and came out as a man. And they do some further investigation and find out that the victim actually died from an overdose of pheromones. And their investigation leads them to this Amish type community called the Kindred. And the middle part, not really a lot happens, except for the fact that Scully almost falls victim to the killer herself, because the killer can actually just touch you and send you pheromone crazy with lust. And she almost goes for it until Mulder walks in on him. And that's actually one of the funnier lines in there. You were about to do the wild thing with some stranger.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the middle part of this is just pretty much rustic, Amish style clandestinism. Not really a lot going on there. There's kind of a mystery to it. Like, we already know that at least one of these people can switch genders. But the bigger mystery at the end is kind of a letdown. It's like they don't come out and say it, but it's like, oh, they were actually all aliens, which I thought was kind of a cheap ending.
Yeah, that's why I put that crop circle thing there at the end. And I felt the same. I gave it 2.5 stars. It's a little confusing, like the whole concept motivation of why they're doing this.
Yeah, yeah,
Because I mean, it starts out kind of like interesting in that sense that it's obviously the Amish. They're kind of getting some influence from the Amish, and there are tales, I think, of within the Amish community how once they reach a certain age, I think they're allowed to just go out and explore the world and make a choice if they want to be part of the world or if they want to stay within the Amish community. Like they give them that choice.
yeah. It's
But
a rite of adult passage, actually.
yes. So I thought that that's where it was going because they do have a nice scene with Scully and one of the killers where he's like, "Yeah, you don't understand," because it ends up that it's this other guy that escaped, and but the dude that's talking to Scully is kind of a freak himself, and he's like, "Oh, he got a taste of porn magazines." I think it was that, right? Like, did they find like some magazines in the woods, and then he started feeling the texture of the magazines and this, that, and the third, and that gets him excited, like, oh, I want to explore this world of sex and lust and everything. And he goes out and tries to explore that. That's kind of a cool concept, but then they add the whole gender bending thing in there, and it's not really explained why or why they need to do this. It's just kind of creepy, though. I mean, when they go up um, to the Kindred's home base, wherever, their little farm, they're just kind of freaky people. It reminds you a little bit of like adult Children of the Corn. Just stay away. And there's always this little mystery. I don't know if it's the same in Canada, but growing up in the U.S., especially where I grew up, which was very close to the Amish, we respected them and everything, but as a kid, it's always cool to think, your brain kind of goes wild and thinking, oh, what do these communities do all by themselves out there? What if they all have these secret societies and that? So I know they were probably just working off of those feelings that we do have growing up about these little communities out in the forest, but it didn't go anywhere with it. It just dude looks like a lady. But I will tell you this: I have a soft spot for this episode for whatever reason. I think it probably has to do with the fact that I grew up near the Amish. Not like next door, but close enough where I would see them. They would come down to the farmers market, and also the little thumb massage thing that they did. I used to try that when I was a kid.
We've all
I
tried it.
seriously did. Like this episode, I must have watched the first run, and that part stuck with me. And I would try to do this little thumb thing to see if girls would like me. It didn't work, guys. It didn't work with the boys either. So I had to find other ways to get attention. The
Yeah, but
Oh, I
there
wrote
was.
that same quote down. I wrote that same quote down, Pete. You're about to do the wild thing with a stranger.
But there is actually one relevant thing about this that you mentioned.
Oh,
Actually,
yes.
yeah, it's a nice piece of trivia here.
Yes, I was going to bring that up in a second. I got some pictures to prove it. But just give me 1 second here. Another thing, just some random stuff here. Scully gets KO'd twice in this episode. Mulder gets knocked out and trusts Scully to finish the job. So you had mentioned how much Mulder gets knocked out for an FBI agent, but Scully gets some hard knocks too, man. Scully gets
Yeah,
knocked around.
the one I was watching
Uh,
tonight, he gets knocked out with a fire extinguisher.
yes, yeah, these guys get knocked the fuck out. And I put "What the fuck" from the shadows. I'm not sure what the hell I was talking about when I said that, but there is that like it's got a lot of weird elements this episode that work by themselves. Like I love when they sneak back into the ranch or whatever, like the little area, and they're looking through this little peep this little hole in the wall, and all you see is like the eye of the horse, and then they see the people go into this underground chamber where they're doing like these, everybody's chanting and everything. There's a lot of cool stuff going on visually there. The show doesn't have as much life when it's in the city following the gender bender person,
Yeah.
but there's a lot of cool stuff. But as Pete was about to mention, and I did notice when watching this, we got Krychek. Although he's not
Indeed.
officially Krychek yet, but he's definitely in this episode. He almost becomes a victim of the gender bender. And so that's a little bit of trivia there. He does end up in the hospital after, and he's really embarrassed because he was about to do it with a girl, but then this cop shows up and stops the party. Just that then the girl transforms into a dude and knocks the cop out and runs away.
And he
So
pukes. That was a nice
see what?
touch.
He pukes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he's like, oh man, I can't believe I was
Yeah.
about to do it with a dude. So so there's a little bit of trivia there that this is Krychek before Krychek. Now, I'll tell you what, I wanted to look at an article from Vulture that mentioned this episode as like 10 most embarrassingly bad X-Files episodes because of using, the whole transgender thing or like body swap and everything. I'm going to save it for next week because they mentioned a few more episodes. Just that it was such a badly written article. I didn't get offended by this at all. But it was a different
Yeah.
time too.
But
I guess
Vulture's like a blog site, though. I mean, pretty much anyone can post on there.
maybe that's why it is. But they took whoever wrote it to town in the comment section because I was looking for the worst episodes because I had just seen Space. So I was looking for actual bad episodes. Like Space is an actual bad episode of the X Files. And then they put a bunch of episodes, like whatever episode dealt with Native American culture. And, like this episode, this gender bender, it was considered a bad episode because they're like, oh, they're just using the culture and not really respecting it to make a weekly show or some bullshit like that. I was like, what? So, but I do want to look at that next week so we can have a good laugh because some of the writing in that article was like, what the hell? But hey, it's a big site, so they gave that person their moment in the sun writing this. But I wasn't offended by this at all. But then again, I'm not, a transvestite or transgender person. Maybe folks who are of that vein would get offended. I'm not sure. But I think that that's a natural reaction to a man who's not into a chick with a dick, that he would either get a bit upset or throw up or whatever, if he, poor Crychick, if he found out whoever he was with ended up to not be exactly who he was with. Hey, I can tell you from personal experience, it takes a while to get used to seeing a vagina, man, if that's not your thing. But I got into it though, Pete. I got into it. That's what I say. I explore. But the first time I saw one of those things, because that wasn't my vibe. I was like, what the fuck is this shit? It looks like it's all split open and it's like, because a penis is nice and like, it's clean and it's just hanging there. I mean, most of them are clean. It's just like an extra finger, you're just looking like a big finger. The vagina, it's like, whoa, who cut you, bitch? But I got into it after, it took me a little bit longer, but I got into it. So I can understand having a vomit reflex if that's not your thing. I gave it 2.5 stars. What'd you give this one out of 5?
Yeah, I mean, I generally do ratings on a scale of 1 to 10, but yeah, I'd say about the same. It'd be about maybe like a 5.5 to a 6, but probably more like 5.5.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so it comes out to about the same.
Yeah.
Oops, I can't change the screen from there. I can change it from here. Episode 15, Lazarus, which I swear to God, I was going crazy because I could not remember what the hell this episode was about. Like 30 minutes before the show, I had to like look it up. But
Yeah, when I watched them a second time that weekend where I had no internet, this one came along and I knew I'd seen it like 2 to 3 weeks earlier. And I remembered the bank robber bit, but I was like, I forget what the catch is to this. Like, is it about the bank robbers? Blah blah blah. And then of course they get shot and then they do the body jump thing and it's like okay I remember now, but seriously, like this was so forgettable that even watching the first 10 minutes I forgot what this was about.
yeah, so the promo poster here says, "Oh, now I'm gonna start putting these little promo posters on the slides, man. I swear this was not here last week, but it's so cool. It says, "Is there life after death? How do you stop a killer who's already dead?" So that's the promo with Scully holding her gun up to somebody. This came out on February 4th, 1994, written by Alex Ganza, there's a good name, and Howard Gordon, and again, directed by David Nutter. Well, yeah, Pete, I wasn't super blown away by this episode. It's got this tattoo. It's apparently this tattoo gives this power, this transfer, this ghost transfer. Um, who plays Jack, by the way? Scully's friend. Do you know?
um
Jackson
it
Davis.
is Christopher Allport.
Oh yeah, Christopher Allport. I was wondering where we might know him from because he seemed like a
uh
familiar face, but
he's got
I
kind
put
of
this down in
familiar,
my
he's a
notes. Who plays
soap
Jack?
opera actor.
Oh really?
Yeah, he was
Jack
in.
Frost,
Yeah.
The Young and the Restless. Yeah, definitely. Oh, he was in Mad Men, but just one episode. NCIS. He's done a lot of stuff after the X Files. He was in Jack Frost, a horror movie. But before this, oh, he was in Beverly Hills 90210. He played Mel's attorney
Oh,
in the
okay.
episode
Very,
of the
very
Rising Moon.
small part.
Yes. Yeah, he doesn't even have a name. He's just Mel's attorney. He was in Doogie Howser. He was in Matlock. He was in a bunch of shows before then. In the Heat of the Night, Days of Our Lives. Okay, he looked a little bit more familiar than I thought. But in either case, yes, he plays this guy Jack, who is Scully's friend, and when they both get shot, there seems to be this kind of soul transfer on
It's not
the.
when they're shot though. It's when they're both in the ER
Yeah,
and they're
yeah,
trying to save
ICU.
his life. And
Yeah.
yeah, they give him the defibrillator. And
Hmm.
it's not the tattoo that causes the transfer. The tattoo is like the symbol of the transfer. Because the robber's transfer starts to appear on Jack's arm. And that's sort of like how we see that this transfer has taken place. But it's something because like at that moment they're kind of both between life and death, and I think the defibrillator is supposed to have something to do with it. I'm not sure, but because they're both essentially like between life and death at the same time, our robber boy here, what's his name, Jackson, no, is able. No, Warren Dupree. That's it, Dupree. He's able to jump into Jack's body.
Yes, no, they explain that later. It's almost this idea of working a little bit with near death experiences and where is your spirit in that moment where your body may be clinically dead, but is it still hanging around, watching things? And what if somebody's similar? Okay, second time I'm bringing up soul, but we got a lot of shows with spiritual shit this week. But similar to like with Soul, yeah, where the black dude jumped into the cat and Tina Fey jumped into his body because they
Right.
were kind of just at a proximity to each other. Uh, but they don't explain it that well because Jack's spirit goes off into the afterlife, it seems more like the robber guy, Dupree, just steals his body. It's just like a body snatch moment. But the thing is that they show this tattoo, so I just put tattoo with powers. It seemed like that's where they were going, but then they try to give this whole other explanation. I will say this: Jack is a man obsessed with his work, so Scully definitely has a type because it seemed like she had a little something with for this guy. She kind of dug him more than just as a friend, and she likes these type of dudes that are just they're just obsessed. We also find out when Scully's birthday is. Do you know?
I forget, but I know why. It's on the same day as Jack's,
Yes,
and they
it's
use that against him.
yes. It's on February 23rd. And I did put in the notes Wonder Woman 84 before Wonder Woman 84 because it's taking over a body, because it definitely feels like a body snatch type of thing. I was curious about how Lola got away in the bank robbery, but then they explain it towards the end where she just kind of
Yeah, she
slipped out.
sold him out.
Set him up. She set his ass up to be caught in that bank robbery. Um, Also, a little bit of a shout out to some CSI investigation. CSI is a show that I never got into, but I know it's very popular. But I know that it was heavily influenced by the X Files, and this is one episode that shows you some of that influence, as far as how Scully is uh, getting all the information via the phone and the computer, and setting up, or either Scully or Mulder, they're getting their profile of their killer and stuff like that. So there's a few scenes like this that we see later on in a bunch of shows. CSI Bones is another show that borrowed heavily from the X Files, but these shows definitely took some of that. Some of the darker, more CSI stuff that the X Files worked with. And Scully is a hardcore skeptic this time. She's 100% like, I cannot believe this, which kind of goes. I would think she'd be a little bit more open to it because of the whole spiritual side, but I guess she is not that much open to there is an afterlife.
Well,
But I
there
don't know.
is a
You, it's
certain degree of rational explanation for the fact that Jack is just obsessed and his near death experience pushed him over the edge. So she's kind of got a logical counterpoint to that. And when you add that into the fact that she did date this guy when he was her instructor, you can see how she might have a bit of a blind spot there.
Yeah, I agree. But I'm with you. Like, it wasn't a bad episode, but, it wasn't anything that I can remember. Like, literally, I was like, I can't remember this episode until I read some of my notes. So, it's okay.
Yeah, it's instantly forgettable. I forgot it right away.
Got a 7.2 rating, which is called Young at Heart. And for whatever reason, I didn't write too many notes on it, because it's probably because I was really enjoying it. But the problem is I couldn't remember it either. And Young at Heart is episode from February 11th, 1994. Scott Cawthon and Chris has in the sage. Now, one thing I really liked about this episode is the score, or not the score, the score. Michael Snow, by the way, we haven't talked enough about him and the music in the X Files because it is fucking great. Uh, Although you can tell when there's a few episodes where he's just like, let me just hit two chords, two creepy chords, and get through this scene. It's just like dun dun dun, and you're like, okay. But when he feels inspired, and he feels inspired at least 70% of the time when he's scoring the X Files, it's amazing, the score. And this one is really great. I love the crazy kind of choral music as Barnett enters Scully's house, and um, I think, don't they end up using her as bait at the end, and they go to like the opera house or something, or like the symphonic? There's like a
Yeah, her friend is having a cello recital.
yes, and they play more of that music. So he went on with a lot of classical themes in this episode as far as the music. Really great. That whole scene where she's in the lobby of the opera house and they filmed the opera house. It's very cinematic, very wide, filmed very wide, very beautifully. And it's also even got some Deep Throat in it and some mad
It
scientist.
does, and it also has the Smoking Man as well.
Yeah, so it goes to a lot of places, which is why I kind of gave it like 4 stars. But the crazy thing is, I can't remember much of it. I don't know why. So I don't know if that 4 stars is valid or not. But there's definitely stuff that I really loved about it. Talk a little bit what you can remember from it, Pete.
Yeah, I mean, to me, this was mostly about the story was pretty incidental, and it was mostly character development for Mulder, giving him fleshing out his backstory a bit. Because our villain here, he's a guy who was a robber, multiple murderer that Mulder helped track down in his pre X Files day, and he took a hostage. He took an agent as a hostage, and Mulder had the chance to shoot him, but he didn't because he didn't want to put the hostage at jeopardy. And this guy killed the hostage and someone else as well, I believe, before being taken into custody. And he supposedly died in prison. But now we have a series of copycat killings going on, and the killer is leaving notes taunting Mulder, and he's convinced that it's this guy. And so they start looking into it, and they find out this guy didn't really die in prison, and in fact, he was experimented on, and that's where the episode title comes from. He's now like a really young guy thanks to this experiment that were being done on a disease that ages children prematurely.
Yeah, progeria, I think it's called.
Yes, yes. So that's basically the gist of it, and it's mostly Mulder's thing. The guy's like sworn to kill everything that Mulder holds dear. He kills off his mentor in a pretty nasty scene, and then, as we've
Yes.
mentioned, he targets Scully. And a byproduct of this treatment he's received is that he has a salamander hand, which I don't know if it really enhanced the episode a lot, but it definitely added some weirdness. But yeah, it's an okay episode. I have to say the villain was a bit too one-dimensional, except for the salamander arm thing. He was
Uh-huh.
just like this crazy, mean, hateful guy. But that's how it is with 45-minute episodes. Sometimes you only see the character once. That's really all they got to work with. Crazy, mean, hateful, psycho.
Yeah, Dick Anthony Williams was live to him. So I was like, oh shit, he went down hard. And what I like about the episode is, yeah, is that they took a left, bringing in Deep Throat and bringing in this whole big, larger conspiracy. And it's kind of cool that they do that because it's like what Pete had said a few times that, sometimes, or maybe I said that too, like you'll get a Monster of the Week episode, but they'll sprinkle a little bit of mythology in there. And it won't necessarily have to do with like the big mythology with like the aliens coming down to Earth and trying to plan their invasion, but it'll let you know that this whole dark shadow government stuff permeates throughout every aspect of the X Files universe. And
Yeah,
they're
and
just
this one they want the technology that made this guy young, which naturally
yes,
they would. So anytime
yeah,
like this kind of like really valuable asset pops up, even though it's not a mythology episode, these guys get involved.
yeah, and it was cool, and it was better than with Ghost in the Machine. It was done a little bit better than that because that was like the twist at the end of that one. That the was it the janitor or something? I don't know, some dude that was working in the building. He was like the operator, the main operator of the
Yeah,
ESO or COS, Central Operating System. I forgot. He was actually working for the government, and he wanted this technology for himself. And this had this similar type of twist where it's like, yeah, we want this, but it was cool. I love this doctor though. He played the perfect kind of freaky ass mad doctor, mad scientist
yeah, he was kind of evil.
who finish his experiments. Which I love how all these guys run away to Latin America to
Yeah,
um,
they called him Mengele.
yeah, exactly, to continue their work. I believe this is Graham Jarvis, the actor, or is it not? No, I don't think it's him. But I can't get his name. Do you remember the name of the doctor? I can't remember the name of the doctor, but I liked him. I liked him. He had a kind of freaky feel
The doctor was Dr. Joe Ridley.
to him with the very pale skin um, and just your regular. How come he's not other Mosley, where he lays off of like every horror trope ever unabashedly, including just having this doctor that just like looks like this very pasty dude who's never gotten a date in his life, and it works. I mean, sometimes it doesn't, but but I can't see things out. I gotta get back to watching. I was doing a MacGyver run a little while back. I was enjoying myself. All right, so we had three kind of okay episodes: Genderbender, Lazarus, and Young at Heart. But then, boom, boom, we get to the big boys, the what many consider to be class files. We got 8 million viewers. Maybe folks were tired of these 3 episodes in a row. They're like, oh shit. But so viewership went way down. But written by Glenn Morgan and James Wong, we got EBE, which is an extraterrestrial biological entity.
Yes.
And this episode has a nice little poster there. It says, "Are there aliens on Earth?" Tonight, two FBI agents uncover a secret that could get them killed by their own government. Tonight, 9 p.m. on Fox 5. And after a downed UFO crash near Iraqi. Probably the most famous thing is that it's the introduction of the Lone Gunmen. They
Yes.
premiere. Yes, and Frohiki's famous line, "He's hot." When Mulder
Yeah,
introduces
and Mulder's even more funny line when Scully says, "The things that those people believe are ridiculous," and Mulder's like, "I don't think it's ridiculous. Someone could believe you're hot."
yes. Um, and another classic line from this episode, Deep Throat: "A lie is most conveniently hidden between two truths." And this
Yeah,
is the episode where a few weeks ago we were talking about this, or maybe it was the last episode where Mulder. It shows how much Mulder respects Scully because Deep Throat gives him a picture of a UFO, a supposed picture, and Scully looks at it and she says it's a fake. And you think that Mulder isn't listening, it's just Scully being Scully again. But then the next day, when she shows up to the office, she gets her coffee. He's there, and he's like, "You're right. Not only is it a fake," and then Pete mentioned this. He found even more reasons why it's a
yeah,
fake. So really cool. Solidified that relationship and showed that Scully isn't just this thorn at Mulder's side, but she is really important to him because he thinks he has so many wild ideas that it's borderless. Like, you need to put a fence up sometimes and say, look, think within this box. It can still be kind of a big box, but you kind of have to think within some boxes if you want to go and find the truth, because otherwise you're just going to be here, there, and everywhere. So also another thing that I noticed in this episode is it has multiple locations. I mean, quote unquote, multiple
yeah.
locations.
They
So
actually the depot that the climax takes place in, that is apparently a BC Hydro power station, which is kind of cool for me because I grew up in BC and I've never actually seen a BC Hydro power station.
oh,
Right
cool.
here in Sao Paulo, our power stations are literally everywhere, and they're these like rinky-dinky little things that a 5-year-old could probably break into. But apparently, BC Hydro power stations are pretty complex things.
Oh, nice. I didn't know that. And then one last note here for me, what I loved about this episode and why it stands out as one of the classic X-Files episodes is that it really goes hardcore with the myth. I mean, we had
Yeah.
mythology episodes, definitely. I mean, with the what did we review last week? The Fallen Angel, and even Deep
Yes.
Throat. This is the second episode of the series. So the mythology is always there. This one is the first one, at least for me, that said, okay, now we're gonna go knees deep into this shit. Like, get ready. For me, this is the episode that really busts it open. What do you like about this one, or don't like about this one?
Yeah, I like most of it. Definitely the lone gunman. If that had been their only appearance, I don't think that would be such a draw for this episode. But because they became such a huge part of it, to the point where they actually got their own spin-off series, that was a really cool aspect of it. I like the layers that it added to Deep Throat because at the beginning, it seems like he's kind of trying to help Mulder track down this crashed UFO that may or may not have had a real live alien on it. And Mulder realizes he's getting the runaround. This guy he may have helped you in the past, but he has his own agenda, and you shouldn't really look at him as your friend. And they get the runaround. This is kind of a part I didn't like about it because, like you said, they're going all over the place chasing this thing. They're getting the runaround. It's like, my God, it's going to be like another one of those red herring episodes. And then, with ridiculous ease, they actually managed to get into a top secret government installation and
Yeah,
almost
who
get.
gave them that?
Yeah.
Who gave them the access?
I think they.
Was it the
No.
lone gunman?
Yeah, that's right. The lone gunman actually they fabricate their ID. So
Okay.
yeah, they're lone gunman Doctor ID because they're just that good. But they get into this facility, and Mulder actually gets all the way. He gets to the chamber where the EBE is
Where it's held, level
supposedly
6.
responsible for all this. Spoiler alert. Yeah. Spoiler alert, gasp, it was Deep Throat all along. But then, we learn a little bit more about this character, what his role is in this conspiracy, and why he's kind of playing both sides of it. So, Lone Gunman and the payoff at the end. There were some middle parts in the end that were kind of frustrating, but it had a good pace. It was exciting. Not my absolute favorite episode of this season, but probably my favorite mythology episode, even more so than the season finale.
Oh, cool. Um, yeah, I'm with you. Like, I think this season had better episodes, but for some of the stuff that it planted, like the seeds that it planted, this was when the mythology was still something we looked forward to. And, before we realized Chris Carter doesn't know what the fuck direction he wants us to go in. But it was still at that time when we were like, oh my God, like I'd never seen anything like this before on TV. And we did it. There was absolutely nothing like this on TV before. And it still feels cool. Not perfect, but it can't be completely perfect, especially when you're dealing with mythology episodes because they're all over the place and there's so many intertwining storylines and who's double crossing who and this, that, and the third. But it just adds elements to the show that are going to be there for so long, right down to who do you trust? In the
Yeah,
end, only really Scully and Mulder can trust each other because you really thought, hey, Deep Throat was on Mulder's side. And you were like, well, maybe he isn't. And what does that mean for the series? So no, I loved it for that, and of course the Lone Gunmen, which became icons of the show. Like Pete said, they got their own show. Didn't do that well because I think they do better working off of Mulder and Scully. I don't think
comic
they're
relief.
yeah, they're comic relief. They can't hold a whole 1 hour episode, but definitely cool guys. I mean, I was so upset when they died later. Spoiler. But dig it, dig it, dig it very much. EBE. And it's here when they show the ratings, how the ratings drop so much. I think so. Somebody on the week and says, "Man, you missed a really great episode," and you're like, "Ah, fuck," I went out drinking
Yeah,
because they had showed me like a month of shit. And then you'll probably notice, let me see what the ratings are for Miracle Man. I bet you they're going to be up. Yep, 11 million viewers. So see how
yeah.
that pumped up. It went straight back up after EBE. But the episode before EBE was Young at Heart, which had 11 million viewers. Yeah, so the viewership was cut in half. And then people were probably like, "Oh shit, I got to get back on the X Files." Um, so yes, next episode and last episode we'll be looking at tonight is Miracle Man, which is an odd episode. I don't dislike it, but at the same time, I'm like, what a weird episode. And this one here was written by our friends Howard Gordon and Chris Carter. So Chris Carter in there again, directed by Michael Lang. And Mulder and Scully encounter a religious healer who seems to have the power to perform miracles. How do you feel about this one, Peter?
I actually kind of like this one. I wasn't blown away by it or anything, but it kind of like you could take an extended version of this and make it into like low budget supernatural, not quite horror, but I don't know if you're a fan of John Sayles, film director, did like Matewan and City of Hope and a bunch of like really low key movies that were just really theme oriented. And I
Uh-huh.
could see the plot of this being extended a bit and making for like a really good John Sayles type small town Americana movie with elements of faith and religion and things like this. Because, yes, it centers around a faith healer who legitimately appears to have the ability to perform miracles. Except now he is under arrest because his powers no longer seem to work. And in fact, they're having the opposite effect and they seem to be killing people. So they have the twofold task. First of all, is this guy really a faith healer, or is it all a scam, as most faith healings are? And second of all, if he's not, or even if he is, what is causing these people to die? So it has definitely this two-pronged element to it with a lot of themes that I think connect with a lot of people. And I like the fact that it's not too preachy too, even though it does center around evangelical faith healing. It's not so cynical that it says like, "Oh, this is all bullshit," but at the same time, it doesn't say that this is, necessarily something that people should put their faith in either.
Yeah, I feel you with that. I was just looking up John Sells. I've never seen. Well, I've seen Piranha. He wrote the screenplay to that, but he didn't
Yeah,
direct it.
yeah.
But I haven't seen most of these. Although it says that uh, his next project is in pre-production is Django Lives. Is that connected at all with a renowned gunslinger fends off racism in 1914 America? He's up in years, but still as deadly as ever. I wonder if that has any connection with Django Unchained. I don't know. But in any case, yeah, so he's still working, which is nice. And he was nominated for Oscar, two Oscars.
Yes, yes, yeah. He's a pretty renowned director, like indie
Yeah,
filmmaker, but pretty well known.
best writing and screenplay for Lone Star in 1996,
Oh
and
yeah, that's my favorite movie of his actually, Lone Star. Yeah.
Passion Fish. He was a nominee for best writing screenplay, written directly for the screen. So cool, cool. But anyhow, I'm with you. Like, there was nothing really offensive about this episode for me. Just on a plot side of it, it's a kind of a cool like little whodunit to start, but then you kind of figure
Yeah,
out real quickly like what's
I
going
figured
on.
out the end. Yeah, well
Yeah,
before.
and it's pretty blasé after that. Like, and especially the motive. It's just like, oh my God, you should have let me die. I have to live. I mean, although I do like to do that, survive the fire. Because the
Yeah,
whole thing is this, like the little teaser at the start is this guy is a fire, and this guy looks like he's all burned up and he's dead, and then this little kid touches him and he survives. And as this little kid is an adult now, and he's traveling around the revival Christian revival tent shows, like Neil Diamond. What's that song? I forgot now, but he has a song about the tent shows. Anyway, the the kid is a big draw, right? Because he's a faith healer,
yeah,
but he feels like he has lost his touch because the people that he's touched are killing or are dying, and we don't know why until like you figure it out pretty quick why.
yeah,
And after that, it kind of loses a little bit of the whodunit mystery aspect of the episode, which I kind of really liked.
yeah.
Uh, but
There are
before that, there are some cool things like the
Yeah,
locust in the court, the locust attack.
the locusts were cool. We get some more Samantha stuff in this too. That's Mulder's
Oh
connection to this faith
yes.
healer dude. He taps
Mhm.
into his pain about his missing sister, and he starts seeing visions of her all over the place.
Yes, there's that. There's a Jessica Hahn name drop in there.
Yes,
That's nice.
yes,
Nice quote from the episode. 99% of the people in the world are fools. The rest of us are in danger of contagion. It's a nice line. And the
yeah,
makeup for the dude was nice. He had this nice Paul Bear, the Paul Bear. He had a nice kind of Paul Bear look to him, which was nice. But it just, yeah, like I wasn't sold on the end and his whole motive. Like, come on, dude. I mean, I know you're a burn victim, but you're fucking alive. Like, there are people in worse conditions. Like, maybe I'd be upset if like some dude brought me back and I was like Christopher Reeve for the rest of my life. Like just a paraplegic, can't do shit. But if
quadriplegic.
I'm a burn victim, I mean, I'd wear some heavy makeup. Obviously, like I probably wouldn't want to see myself in the mirror because it's pretty nasty. But I'm fucking alive. Does my dick work? I don't know. If it does, like, I
Yeah,
think I'd be okay. You know? I mean, I guess you can't say till you've been there, but I've
yeah. Well, I've known burn victims, and they have widely different theories on that. Like I used to work with this burn victim who was a motivational speaker. And I mean, this guy was nasty. He was pretty badly. His hands like were basically stumps because the fire just turned them into these paws, more or less. So
hmm
it he had a really good attitude about it. But I also remember this guy I used to see in Thailand begging on the streets, and this guy was like so crispy, he was rigid. And yeah, if I was like that, I don't know that I'd want to live.
Um, yeah, I'm Googling here,
I
and it
did,
says that burn victims maintain right to die. So they do have. Yeah, I guess, I mean, yeah, it's tough to say unless you're actually there. This article here by Margaret Engel, Happy Life Afterward doesn't make up for torture. Yeah, it's intense. I don't know. It's hard to
yeah,
say. But
I did
I
like
don't think.
the,
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
yeah, no, I did like the aspect too of the sheriff's department's involvement in this as well, because there's some pretty sinister elements going on there. And towards the end, I thought, wait, are we going to leave that whole aspect unresolved? And the fact that they didn't actually made the ending kind of satisfying.
Well, they didn't say just that last part because I missed just the last part.
The fact that they actually resolved the role of the sheriff's department in all this at the end
Mm.
was kind of satisfying because it seemed like, okay, we've solved the mystery. Now it's over and we're going to move on. But just in like the last minute or two, it's like, nope,
Mhm.
we haven't forgotten this. We're going to address this. So
Yes, because there was this little B plot about how the sheriff was a little bit of a shithead, and
yeah,
it was kind of nice that they did resolve that because his wife, I think, was in a wheelchair, right? Something like that.
yes, and he refused to take her to see. She had MS, I think, and he refused to take her to see Samuel, and she died. And he kind of resented. He hated himself for it, but he was taking out that resentment on Samuel.
Mm-hmm.
And an interesting trivia thing about this was filmed in the exact same town as the Gender Bender episode. So if that looked familiar at all, that is why.
Okay. Um, Now, I'm reading here an article by this guy who's talking about the right to die as a burn victim, and basically he lost his case with the his option to die. And the interviewer does ask him, "You would still opt to die?" And he says, "Yes, I have a life that I did not have then. I might not make the decision as readily, might be able to endure more pain and push myself to the outer edge, but I still do not want to be forced. I still want to remain in control. I want it to be my decision and not someone else's." So, yeah, tough to say. Well, I guess the problem I have with it is that they didn't dig deep enough into that aspect of this guy being that depressed or that upset about the fact that he was allowed to live, especially since they were with these motherfuckers for like, I mean, the kid's an adult. He was not a kid anymore.
Right.
He's an adult. So it took you 20 years to finally get to the point where you feel now I want to blackmail, or not blackmail, I guess would be like falsely incriminate this boy
Right.
uh, to murder because he let me live. Like, you guys could have just sat down and had a nice talk or something. I don't know. I mean, he's a little boy. So, yes, like that part of it wasn't sold to me that well. It's like you seem to be doing all right and you don't seem to be like that fucked up, you know? I mean, like Pete was saying, like some people are burn victims. If you're missing limbs, or even I've seen some pictures of like people that had like acid attacks, and like that's something that
Yeah.
makes me paranoid still. You know, I remember one time I was walking down Avenida Paulista, which is the main avenue here in Sao Paulo, and this little girl just threw something at this friend of mine that was with me, but it was like a piece of fruit or something. It was like this homeless girl, but it still makes me paranoid when I think, oh my god, like you can't really defend an acid attack. Like motherfuckers that do that, especially in India, you know, they
Yeah.
have a lot of cases where the guy didn't get pussy, so he goes and like acid attacks some woman. It's like it's so fast, you have no way to defend against it. Like a knife, a gun, you kind of, sort of, maybe have a way to get out of it. But if somebody just runs up and throws some shit at you, it's still like one of my paranoia phobias. So that okay, but this guy, he's like, you know, he could have worked for the WWE. He would have been a star. You know, he didn't. It
Yeah.
wasn't that fucked up. So they didn't sell that well enough for me, which is why I thought that his motive at the end was kind of like, really, come on. But anyway, we're done for tonight. Retro reviews, The X Files, season one, episodes 13 to 18. What you got, Pete? Out of these 6 episodes here, let me open my notebook up and see. We got Beyond the Sea, Lazarus, Young at Heart, EBE, and Miracle Man. Watch or skip Beyond the Sea?
Oh, must watch. Must
I
watch.
agree. Must watch. Although, like I said, if you're a little weak in the heart, you know, maybe don't make it your very first episode because it's heavy. You know, ease into it. Watch Ice first or something, or Deep Throat, because it is a
Yeah.
heavy episode, but it's a definite must watch. Gender Bender, skip or watch?
You can skip that one.
I have a soft spot for it, but I don't think it's a good episode if you're trying to get into the series. It's not a good showpiece, but I have a soft spot for it. But I got to go with Pete, and it's a skippable one. Lazarus.
Yeah, like I said, I forgot this one like within weeks of watching it, so that's definitely a skip as well.
I'd go with Skip also. And what about Young at Heart?
I got to give that skip too.
Like I said, I wrote so few notes on it, yet I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. So I have no clue why I love this as much as I did, other than, like you said, it does give some nice background to Mulder, and the guy that's chasing after him. It's very menacing. There's some menacing aspects to it. The cinematography, the music is really great. So I'd say give it a watch. It's not a horrible episode, and it's one of those nice X Files just being like Law and Order type episodes. You know, like it could be a story
Right.
that fits into any other one of these cop shows, except it's got a little bit of a paranormal feel to it, and they do it very well. EBE.
Definite must watch. Even though I don't like it as much as I like Beyond the Sea, it's essential viewing. It's a high quality episode, a lot going on in there, and yeah, it pretty much delivers all the goods.
I agree. If you get into the X Files, you gotta get into the mythology because it was damn good for about 3 or 4 years, and it all kind of for me, this is like the first one. Like, you want to get into the mythology, this is it. Maybe Deep Throat a little bit, and then jump right into this, and it's hardcore mythology. And the Lone Gunmen, of course, which are great from the first time on screen. They're fully formed and awesome. And finally, Miracle Man.
Yeah, Miracle Man. I like this episode, but I definitely think you won't be missing anything too crucial if you skip it.
I agree. I don't think it's one that I would recommend anyone to watch because it does bore me. I remember when I did the rewatch and I was like, ugh, it's really grabs my attention for about 10 minutes, maybe the first act and a half, and then I'm just like, yeah, okay. So definitely, we got more skips this chunk than watches. I gave Young at Heart a little bit of love, but really only Beyond the Sea and EBE I think are the two must watches of this chunk here. Not the strongest chunk, but then
Yeah,
we have a
that's the
pretty
thing.
good. Go
That's
ahead.
the thing with the long seasons, though. We talked about this. Usually, like when you're going an episode a week from September through May, that's how they do it, man. They hook you at the beginning with their best stuff, and then they kind of slack off during the spring, the early spring and late winter, and then as they head towards summer, that's when they start to bring in the good shit again. So that's kind of the formula.
Exactly. I think Chris Carter talks about that in this behind the scenes doc I was watching, where when they talk about the sweeps, like the time where all the advertisers are going after it, he's like, that's like if you watch every one of the two parters, that there's going to be a whole bunch of them coming up. They all came out at about the same time because that's when we knew we could get the most money out of advertisers, when the production would give us more money to make more of these more epic episodes, because that's when
Yeah.
it was the rating sweeps. It's when we could grab these folks to ride them into the end of the season. And yeah, that's when you get a string of 5, 6, sometimes 7 episodes, which are just like mind blowing. But you have that period, in the winter, end of December to about end of January, start of February, where they'll slip in some good ones, but that's where the lesser episodes end up. Unless, you just happen to have a really strong season. And some shows just do it. I think the X Files, as we start going deeper into the seasons, you'll find that, man, there are a couple seasons where beginning to end, you're just like, damn, that was 24 either very decent to really incredible episodes. So sometimes the show just gets into a rhythm, but it was difficult to do. I know DS9 was like that too, Deep Space Nine, where they just got into a rhythm around season 4, 5, and 6, where you're just like, what? Like you're just watching every single one of those 24 episodes. But it's difficult to do and to maintain. Anyway, that's it for tonight, y'all. Thank you if you made it all the way to the end, and thank you to all the listeners. Yeah, the people that are just supporting the channel and all that jazz. We will be here next week on time.
Yes, indeed. And we will be back on Monday with reviews of other stuff we have been watching.
Yes, and I believe we'll be talking about some curse words. So
Yes, yes, that should be an entertaining episode for those of you with juvenile senses of humor.
yes, see you, people. Bye.
Cheers.